Lead the Team Nation, and welcome back to another great episode. Today, I have for you Bob Armour, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at M1, the finance super app where he manages all aspects of marketing and an awesome team of 28. M1 helps people manage and grow their wealth with investing, saving, borrowing, and spending all in one place. Over 500,000 people trust M1 with more than $7.2 billion in assets. Now, he's received his undergraduate degree at Notre Dame, and I went to Alabama, so we have a natural rivalry, which might come out in this call. And he also has his MBA from Northwestern, and you might detect his Boston accent, which blends well with my Alabama accent, which is from the Boston suburbs. Bob, welcome to Lead the Team, sir.
Thanks for having me, Ben. I'll tell you, there's not much of a rivalry between Notre Dame and Alabama. As I remember, Alabama, it's a pretty one-sided thing. But I'll say thank you for saying that it's a rivalry, but I don't think it's very two-sided.
In recent memory, recent history, I would agree with that. But back in the day, I mean, I was born, back in the late 70s, back in Alabama, and it was all like Notre Dame's our arch nemesis and all this stuff.
Times have changed over the last
times have changed a little bit. But Notre Dame just sent their offensive coordinator to Alabama to run.
That's right, Tommy Rees. He's going to be pretty good for you all. So I'm jealous.
People were shocked by that. Like, is it okay to have a former Notre Dame quarterback running our offense as offensive coordinator? But people seem okay. No. Let's start this interview. You're all great interviews start, which is with Greek yogurt. Now, I understand not only are you a CMO, but you are a Greek yogurt enthusiast, as I am too. But I want to hear your perspective on Greek yogurt. Why do you describe yourself as an enthusiast?
So, one, I was looking for something healthier, something with a lot of protein, something like to just, be nutritional, and stumbled upon Greek yogurt many years ago. And then I'm on a quest for the best tasting Greek yogurt. And currently, I'm eating one called Fage, which is Fage, really good, really tasty, low sugar, really tasty. Is that your favorite too?
Yes, it is.
Nice. Okay.
Yes.
Have you gone on a similar quest?
I have, and I've tried a lot of different ones. My mom dropped off a different brand the other day. Haven't tried it yet. But yeah, I mean, it's high protein and it's pretty good. And man, it's a great way to get the day started or have a snack.
For sure. Well, you did some digging, I think, on me to find that out. So appreciate the question.
Well, let's just keep rolling with the random questions. 80s one-hit wonders, right? So what is your favorite 80s one-hit wonder?
So there's a lot of them, but my top favorite is A Million Miles Away by the Plimsouls in the, kind of not, nominated movie called Valley Girl, but the song really good. Million Miles Away by the Plimsouls, top of my list, 80s one-hit wonder.
A Million Miles Away. Okay, that one's not, I love music. That one's not, like, I'm not remembering that song, but I'm going to make sure we include a link to it in case people want to check it out.
Excellent.
Are you into music a lot? Do you listen to it throughout the day? Is that part of your routine?
Not so much during the day. I'd say when I do listen to music during the day, if I'm focused doing something, it'll be like either rainy afternoon jazz music that I'll find on YouTube, or kind of the alpha brain waves. I don't know if I buy it, but it says that it keeps you a lot more focused. So I listen to that during the day, but not 80s one-hit wonders, unfortunately.
Well, all right. So let's dig into your career a little bit. Early jobs. How has an early job that you've had affected or infected? I guess I'll say affected or impacted your leadership style.
So truth be told, my first job was 9 years old. I was a paper boy. I delivered papers. I actually had to collect the money too. So imagine going door to door, dropping off papers and collecting the money. So that's one. But I'd say the earliest job that had the most impact on me was working with my dad. My dad is or was, he actually passed away this year. So it was, when we were talking about this interview, this was, something top of mind. But I worked with him probably for, I don't know, from grade school all the way up into college. He founded and operated a taxi company and transportation company in my town outside of Boston. So I grew up, working side by side with him, started sweeping the floors and then worked my way to the books and then answered phones and then cleaned taxis and then drove taxis. And so, aside from realizing I didn't want a full-time career in taxi or anything related to taxi, I got to see my dad, kind of interact with people, and he was an entrepreneur. And so I think that kind of certainly shaped my upbringing. And I think as I look back on my career, I think that was the roots of kind of why I've, gone into more entrepreneurial approaches than, say, kind of headline big company names.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. It's there's one thing for someone to tell you how to work and how to be in the world, but to see it role modeled can make such a huge impression on you. And it can
Oh,
be
for
a
sure.
grounding force in your career.
For sure. He worked super hard, and he had this expression when we were driving. Um, Taxi drivers at the time, there's no Uber or anything like that. You did a 12-hour shift. So it was, for me, it was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I was often like, Dad, this is like terrible. It's a 12-hour day. And his answer was, it's just a half day, deal with it. So it was very much like, you didn't have an answer to that after that was given.
Well, it's a half day. You still have the other 12 hours to rest
That's
and to
very
pursue
true.
what you would like. I believe you also, early on in your career, worked in America Samoa. Is that right?
I did. I was a volunteer high school teacher in a Pongo Pongo, American Samoa. After my first job out of college, I was a financial analyst at Merrill Lynch in their investment banking unit. So I was super busy, super entrenched in work for 2 years. And I had done a lot of volunteer work at Notre Dame, and those 2 years it didn't offer me an opportunity to do that. So I knew I was going to graduate school at some point, and I thought this would be the perfect time to go do some service, go see another part of the world. And I'm glad I did it, because I think it changed the way I think about leading. Actually, it changed the way I think about serving. And I think it gave me a good view of the South Pacific, which is a very different place than, say, where we live.
Looking back at that time period, what advice would you give your younger self today, or maybe something new that you would have tried?
I mean, I'd say, I'm glad I did it. So I don't think I would change my approach there. If someone came to me with a similar thing and a similar question, I would say 100% do it, because the links of responsibility that get laid on you after you graduate from school, have a job, have kids, own a house, all those things, you don't have the chance to kind of go grow and go experience things that are very different. So 100%, for anybody that's considering doing that, go do it. You won't regret it. You will love it. And it'll take you to places that are super surprising, and, they'll be memories forever.
It is so much easier to travel sometimes when you're younger, especially for longer periods of time, and you don't have all the obligations. And it's such a huge learning opportunity. I mean, I think every trip I take, I come back a little bit changed, having picked something up from that.
For sure. And again, I had to be a teacher. So I had to stand in front of a classroom this was an all boys school. So it was all Samoan boys, various, kind of English speaking capabilities, not a ton of resources. So we had to be scrappy, and we had to connect, and we had to, drive our lessons home. But it required a lot of, thinking on your feet to make stuff happen.
What's the one trait you wish you could instill in every employee, and why do you think it's so important?
Mm-hmm. I'd say, I mean, and this is speaking especially from an entrepreneur's perspective, I'd say bias for action. Make your move when you can, especially in a like disruptive environment that we're in, where we're battling. M1 is battling Fidelity, Vanguard, Chase. I mean, Goliaths in financial services, and one of our weapons is we can be asymmetrically fast if people act quickly and learn. And so moving fast, having a lot of quote unquote at bats to learn about what your customers are going to like, gives you the ability to kind of outflank, brands that have been, kind of instilled in people's brains for decades and processes that are in people's brains for decades. And frankly, very few actions can't be undone. So if there's a mistake, it can usually be fixed. So I don't know. I'd say go. You've got an idea. Don't just talk about it. Go do it and act.
Yeah, that's a great point, and especially that can be your competitive advantage when you're in, like you said, against such Goliaths in the finance industry. Now that what strikes me on the finance industry and the banks is that they're not typically known for innovation, right? Because it's based on security, like that we're not changing much. I mean, if they change their web interface even slightly, people start freaking out about their where they have to type their password in next. You guys are sort of this insurgent organization. How are you thinking through that as a leader?
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's when you look at other consumer-facing services and apps like Amazon, like Facebook, like Snapchat, like anything, the UI and UX is world-class. And for most financial services companies, it's not. And so there's, the founding of M1, actually, our founder that was one of the things that, was the touch point for him was these experiences stink. Why can't I have a similar experience when I'm managing my money as what I get elsewhere? And so we still need to be very cognizant of your money's safe. We still need to engender trust for sure. But we think that combined with a great experience with automation, personalization, et cetera, is kind of what people are used to and what they frankly should get when they're managing their money too.
Yeah. Where do you see all this heading with machine learning, artificial intelligence? I mean, it seems like such a great opportunity, but when you think about the financial sector, it's a little scary to think about it because it starts, concern around security and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, anything new comes with a level of scariness as it is. But I think on the more optimistic side of things that most people aren't that are scared of managing their money. Most people are not that sophisticated in how they manage their money. And therefore, oftentimes they spend a lot more than we think they need to in terms of advisors and support for them to do that. We believe that, an individual is capable of managing his or her own money, that we want to become the place where you can trust to put your money and that your money is going to flow to the right places it should flow to based on where you want it to go. So I look at, early stage, it's not even AI, but early stage automation, already exists. We're using it to say, when your money reaches a certain level in your safety account, where do you want to point that money from there? You can do that automatically. I think AI will get to the point where it says, I'm your AI advisor. What are you trying to do? And how can the advisor and the person connect so that essentially what's happening today with human advisors gets done with AI? So I'm super optimistic on it. I think, there's plenty of places that have to be hammered through to make sure that the outcomes are right and that the machine is not doing something wrong with your money. But I'm super optimistic with what's in front of us.
So what are some things that you think might surprise some people to hear of trends that you've seen, or how people are using apps or how they're spending money or saving money or investing? What do you think would be a surprising element to that for a lot of people to understand?
I think the thing that surprises me the most is that though if you read any personal finance literature and anything that is trying to help people build wealth, most of the literature, or I mean, even Warren Buffett will say, like, you're young, keep investing, keep doing what you're doing, don't care about what the market is, make sure your stuff is, framed out the way it should be framed out so that your risk tolerance, it feels good to you.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you from just watching the market and kind of hearing from customers, people don't think about it that way. They aren't as able to keep their emotions out of even their long-term decisions. So it is surprising to me in the sense that is what gets preached all day, every day. And even savvy people, I think, fall victim to it, where they make a rash move because things aren't the way they should be or the way they want to be in the market, and bad outcomes come from that. So I think, back to the AI point, I think one of the ways that AI and frankly, actually human advisors provide the best possible value is that they can act like a psychologist or a coach to you to make sure that, you are not making decisions that ultimately will be bad for you. So it's surprising to me that despite all the education, people are still swayed by their emotions a lot more than you think. And I think, for the people who know themselves, who are built that way, there is a place for a machine or a person to talk them down from the ledge so that they don't do things that are going to impact their long-term wealth building.
Yeah, I've often wondered how many financial transactions are put in or made right after happy hour. So people are at happy hour. You should buy this. You should do this. Oh my gosh, the market's doing this. A few cocktails in, they go home and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm on my phone. I'm making this trade. I'm doing this. I don't know. Do you have any? Is there any research back that up?
I don't have any research to back it up, but I can tell you from talking to customers that, there are things that as a client, as a manager of your own money, if you're going to be that way, you need to block yourself from either acting like that very impulsively or acting like it's a gambling machine. Again, like the rise of all the gambling apps, I think for younger people in particular, I think the stock market and DraftKings and other kind of gambling apps in many ways kind of look and become and feel like the same thing. And it becomes entertainment where you end up always losing money when you play those games.
The house always wins.
The house always wins, and you can enable the house in kind of stock market playing if you're playing too much.
Yeah, it's so great. And I love that perspective for leaders to be thinking about, not just for their finances, but other parts of their life. Really partnering with apps, partnering with machine tools to help us build constraints to keep our emotions from running away with really negatively affecting our actions. And
for sure,
someone, I don't know if I've read a bit of this in the training that we provide on helping leaders make great decisions, but I guess all decision making takes place in the limbic part of the brain, which doesn't respond to rational thought or numbers. So that's when you think you're shopping for a car and you're maybe making that decision based on price, but ultimately it's if you like the car. Does it make you feel good? And that's a dangerous place to be when you're taking a really long-term approach to the financial side.
So Ben, I'm a marketer, and there's like time-tested true statement in marketing that you make decisions with your heart and you justify them with your brain. And like, I think the reality is, like, if you're going to, I think, try to make good decisions, leadership decisions, market decisions, whatever it is, you have to know that about yourself, and you have to catch yourself in those moments when that path is the one you want to go down and you really shouldn't. And so what are the things that you as a person should be putting in place to prevent yourself from doing that? I mean, the famous one is sleep on it, right? Like, don't make the decision, push it off, let your mind ruminate on it. But there's tons of other things that I think you could do to make sure you're not like doing something that's going to have a bad impact, whether it's your finances, with your team, with your relationships, whatever it is. I think that there's like, you've got to make sure that that isn't the animal part of your brain isn't taking over. You don't know, and you don't know about it.
Is there a favorite decision you made where you're glad that you put a stopgap or slept on it that saved you?
Not exactly. I mean, I'll point back to like my decision to go to Samoa was like, again, was something that was, at the time, I didn't realize how big of an impact it would have on me. And I'll give you a story that I think will help like frame this for you. One of the classes that I was responsible for at the high school in Samoa was computers. I had to teach computers, and I was a financial analyst, so I was pretty familiar with all that. And but the computers they had at the high school were terrible. They were, again, you might see them, but I think your audience may not. Anyway, they're called Commodore 64s. Look them up. Yeah. They're like front running computers. They were terrible. Yes. Wouldn't teach kids anything, right? So I had at Merrill Lynch, I had worked a lot with spreadsheets, and Lotus 123 was the spreadsheet program that we used, again way back when, before it was Excel.
I know Lotus.
Yeah. And so I told my friends at Merrill Lynch, I said, send me some old, software programs that you're not using for Lotus. And so I was like, to the class, I was like, I'm going to teach you spreadsheets. And I made up a class, right? It was super basic, but it gave them something like a real life tool. I just did it like it was because of what we had. It was terrible. So literally 21 years later, I get a connection from one of my students on Facebook, and he sends me a note. This was the first time I've heard from this kid in 21 years. He says, Mr. Bob, that's what they call the teacher, Mr. whatever. I was Mr. Bob. Mr. Bob, like, here's what I've been up to. He said, I've never told you this before, but my first job out of college, or out of school, I think he went to college, was at Sprint. And in the interview, they asked if I knew spreadsheeting. And I could say yes, because of the class that you did. And that has inspired my love of computers. And that's been my career the whole time. And so when I look back on that, like, I wonder, like, was I doing it because of something that was going to set this kid's career on the path that it ended up becoming and unlocking what he ended up doing? Definitely not. I did it only because I was like, we need to do something different, better, more interesting. But then when something like that happens, you're like, okay, like, why shouldn't we as leaders be looking to do that all the time? Like, looking at stepping into a situation that is, suboptimal or not great. And like, can you make it that much better through not a ton of effort, right? Sure, I had to go get the stuff and I had to create, quote unquote, the class, but it didn't take that much. And to hear something like that, you're like, okay, that's a worthwhile outcome. So back to your question of like, what's the decision? Like, these decisions, I think, just happen every single day that you can step in and do something. And maybe, again, like 21 years later, something shows up, but probably there's plenty of stories that all of us don't hear about that are that you've had an impact
Yes.
and
Yeah.
through not a lot of work. So anyway, slight tangent from the exact answer, but I think that's an important
No, it is an
thing to
important thing.
recognize.
And I'm glad we're on the interview today, because I think a lot of leaders, it's also so easy to get dragged down in the mundane stuff of management. But to think about the leadership thing is the piece where you get to be creative, you get to inspire. And what a great example of something that you did once impacted somebody's life down the road 21 years later so much where they felt compelled to reach out to you. And we as leaders don't always know what the actions and decisions we're making, how they're going to impact ourselves, but man, they can also positively impact others. And that's the whole idea in the first place.
For sure. And as leaders of groups, you're surrounded by people that are looking to you to help them, motivate them, make them better, and you have a chance every day to do it.
Now, you've proudly related that you are the oldest person in your company.
I am.
And what's that like?
I think it's pretty awesome in the sense that, you can bring a lot of, been there, done that to technical parts of the job, to leadership parts of the job, to management parts of the job. And so, so I feel like there's contributions that are made that are unique because of that. And I also think that
and just for the audience, Bob's not in his 80s or his 90s. He's a pretty young guy. So
yeah, really young.
The oldest
sure.
guy is
well,
there's a certain perspective here.
But the other nice thing about being, I'll just say I'm 58, right? And the founder CEO is 33, I think. So there's like a generation gap difference. But the funny thing is, like, hanging around, that kind of like vintage of person, like, you learn a lot more about like popular culture. And so anytime I'm hanging with friends of my age, I'm like the cool one because I know what's going on because
Bob, what's
I'm
the younger
around
generation doing? When you took the role, did you feel any intrepidation? You're like, okay, I'm coming in here. This is going to be a bunch of, it sounds like a millennials generation, maybe a little Gen X in there. I guess no, it's probably millennials more.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I'm Gen X, so it's like I think I'm the last year of Gen X, so there's no more Gen X's. No, I think part of it is anybody that I talk to in a weird way, like I always think is the same age as me, no matter what. Like I don't like have the thing around like, oh, that person's younger. Sure, they are, but like anytime I'm interacting with them, especially at work, it's like everybody is good, kind of like same age. And the other side was like, did I have trepidation? I mean, joining a startup, is there's an element of like, are you making the right decision? But I believed in the mission. I believed in what the company was up to in terms of like helping people, improve their lives through wealth gathering the right way. And I was pretty excited by it. But despite the age difference, that part really didn't hit my radar so much.
Cool. Well, it was great. A real voice of just treat people like people and go in for the excitement of the opportunity and see where it goes.
Definitely that.
So starting to wrap this up, what are 3 success strategies that you believe every employee needs to keep in mind?
I mean, they're super basic, Ben. I mean, one is like, find the work that you love to do, and not the work that you have to do because you want to get a promotion or you're going for something that's, outside of like why you're really doing what you're doing. So that's number one, is like, and that was a lesson I learned, like my first job out of business school. I joined something, didn't like it. And then it ultimately pointed me to an entrepreneurial path, which was like where I love what I love doing. So that's like the first thing. I mean, I'd say this, like a practical thing is is like, in the role that you play, you have your responsibilities, right? You've got to do certain things, deliver certain things, whatever it is. Um, the the reality is, like, you can do more by what I would call seeing the play, or seeing the field, not just your play. So, in other words, like, what is your boss concerned about? What is your CEO concerned about? And how do you connect what you're doing more succinctly to what they're interested in doing, so that you can, one, be more effective in what you're actually spending your time on, and two is, you start to, quote unquote, do the job of your manager, and so that's the second thing. I'd say the third thing, and this is something from like working with my dad that was kind of, I saw a lot, he said a lot, is like, say thank you a lot, and recognize the people that are working with you to achieve whatever you're trying to achieve, So I think that, I don't know, good karma, good vibes that come from that make people a lot more likely to work with you and a lot more likely to kind of follow you if they feel like they know that you see what they do, appreciate what they do, and advocate for what they do. Um, and now, so as I'm talking, I'll give you a bonus one too, because people ask me this all the time. The fourth one is like network. And when I say network, like, people think networking is putting yourself out there and trying to forward your own outcome. When I say network, it's like, go and meet a lot of people, go listen to them, go find out what they're trying to achieve and how you might be able to connect the dots for them, so that it doesn't feel like a grab for the person who's networking. It feels like a give for the person who's networking. So, I don't know. That's my fourth one, would be network, but think about it kind of in reverse, more in terms of what you're contributing as a networker than what you're trying to get as a networker.
Yeah, so many good ones in there. Several that resonate with me. This idea of seeing the field, not just the next play. As employees, it's so easy to just get stuck on what you're doing, getting that tunnel vision. But the overall value that you provide to the organization has got to be far beyond that. And if you don't really network and have those other kinds of conversations inside your company, it's going to be hard to really see the field. So I think those two really go hand in hand. And when you have those conversations, I think you're just so spot on. If everyone always feels like you're trying to take from them and just get a bunch of information and go off, or it's always what they can do for you, you're just not really supercharging the possibility of those conversations. And just by putting in a few minutes of thought, what's a new bit of information I can provide this person, or maybe what's a bit of appreciation I can do for them after. This idea of like a handwritten thank you note to someone that's mentored you a little bit, or an introduction that you can make for them. But I like that appreciation mindset, I think, can go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it just kind of all fits. And frankly, like, who do you want to work with? You want to work with people who are genuine and likable and authentic, and like, you know, just hearing what they're about and trying to, I don't know, make it more fun at the very base level, but also just make it more productive because it is more fun. And you're making those people feel good along the way. So yeah, so it all kind of fits, but it's all super basic, Ben. It's all stuff that like our parents probably, instilled in us at one point. So I don't have any like, tablets from the mount to give here, but so it's super basic.
Your tablets that you bestowed today are quite good and can be quite helpful. Really, from the Mount, they're from Mount Bob.
Okay.
Mount Bob today. And
for sure.
Some great yogurt recommendations on FIA too. an 80s one-hit wonder. So mix in a very broad and fun and varied conversation. Bob, thanks for coming on the show today, my friend.
Ben, thanks for having me. Appreciate your time, your questions, your energy. Really great. Thanks again.